Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Coach Bru podcast, your fearless leader here, bringing you what I think will be a real interesting, insightful episode with my probably easily my favorite person I've ever had on the podcast. I say that about all my guests, but this time I actually mean it, is Kristin Melanie, who is the owner and founder of Breathe With Me Yoga. Um, we are going to be very zen and take a lot of deep breaths today. Uh, I'm kidding. We're actually not going to do that. We're going to have a conversation about some marketing genius that she has deployed upon the start of her business. And if you've listened to this podcast or read any of my stuff for any amount of time, you know my core belief is your best ideas will always come from outside your industry. And with that in mind, I think you are going to take this one idea that she has deployed very successfully to grow a rabid following and expand her brand in ways that I wouldn't even call them competitors because I don't think she has any competition, but in ways that her industry peers never ever dreamed of doing. And you're going to be able to do the same thing when we're done listening to this. So, first of all, Kristin, welcome.
Thanks.
This has been, I will say this has been a work in progress getting her on the podcast. We started this full conversation about what she was doing, and I'm trying to be as suspenseful as possible and sort of tease the topic. But we've had this ongoing conversation for damn near 2 years about what she's doing, trying to get her on the podcast. Schedules has never worked out, and then we set a date to record 2 weeks ago, and all of a sudden my internet connection went out 5 minutes into the pod. So here we are back after it again, and hopefully, knock on wood, Spectrum, Charter, Time Warner Cable, whatever they're calling themselves this week, will maintain a stable connection for me. So, Kristin, you didn't grow up wanting to be a yoga instructor, I imagine. I don't think any little kid grows up saying, you know what I want to be when I grow up? I want to be a yoga instructor. So you just sort of kind of laterally entered that profession in a unique way, I imagine. Can you kind of give us a little bit of the backstory as to how you landed where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So, definitely not wanting to be a yoga teacher from when I was a little kid. I didn't even really like yoga up until 7 years ago. And
Why was that? Why do you think that is?
I
Because
just never,
now, like, you're living it. You went from not really liking it to
yeah,
living it.
yeah, I just never really found a teacher that I connected with. And every time I would go to a class, when I was new, I didn't understand the lingo, and nobody really slowed down and kind of tried to help me. So I just felt didn't it didn't fit. I was uncomfortable. I'd leave the
Yeah.
class, I just spent most of it trying to figure out how to escape, what pose would be the least noticeable. And then 7 years ago, I started to get into meditation, and I found this yoga studio, and the owner of it, she was just great. Like, she knew I hadn't really done yoga. She put me in a position where I could follow someone who did know how to do it. She took some time to explain things to me, and I
Yep.
was able to really just get excited about yoga.
So isn't that interesting, the difference a great teacher or a great coach makes? Isn't it, like,
Absolutely.
it's not like the whole practice of yoga magically changed and it became likable for you. It's you had the right type of person introduce it to you in the right manner.
I did. Yep.
Yeah.
And that happened. I really got into that just about a month before I was got pregnant, and I was so sick during my pregnancy, and that's really how my yoga kind of grew more. Is I was sick, and yoga was one of the things that really made me feel good both physically and mentally.
Yeah.
So during that time I practiced Ashtanga yoga, which is a pretty physical type of yoga, up until probably 4 days before I gave birth. So it was a modified thing, but it really helped me. It really helped me. No, it really helped me gain an understanding and a love for yoga.
So for people like me who have trouble sitting still and are like just totally ADD out the wazoo, um, and it sounds like you had initially kind of struggled with the whole idea of sitting still and just kind of sitting still, shutting up and breathing and being alone with your thoughts. How did you, how kind of coach me and other the listeners who are a little suspect about maybe should I even think about trying this yoga thing. um, I do think success leaves clues, and there's so many people who yoga's just grown in popularity so much as of late that people are onto something with this, and the ability to just kind of be a little more mindful, to control your breath, to manage your stress. That's something everybody needs, especially now more than ever. What would be your best advice for those of us who are a little suspect about, is this really for something that would be for me?
Yeah, I think the first thing with that is to let go of kind of your idea of what you think yoga should be, and what, it's not about the person who holds that perfectly difficult pose that you wonder how they do it, but it's more about just taking it at your own pace, working with your own body and mind, and just trying to be a little bit better. Or in all honesty, it's really just about listening to your body. So there are some days when I could literally do a yoga class and all I want to do is lay in Shavasana the whole time. And that's fine. So it's
I
just,
don't even know what that
oh,
means.
right. It's the
Okay.
final resting position. It's a corpse pose Shavasana. It's where you're laying down on your back, your feet and arms, just in a total relaxation state, just fully
Gotcha.
supported. Um, so so again, it's just about letting go of what you think yoga should be, and just allowing yourself to understand that it's not about perfection. It's not about how flexible you are. It's not about how still your mind can be. There are yoga classes where my mind races the entire
Yep.
hour, and that's okay. Like that's just, but what yoga kind of teaches you and me is to come back to your breath. So to slow down, to just breathe, to come back to that focus. And then,
So yeah, so if you're not in a yoga class and your mind's just going 100 miles an hour, how can you use the practice of yoga to just kind of quiet your mind and just sort of recenter, whether it's at work, at home, like whatever you're doing? How do you just kind of do that? So I think that's the number one thing people want is like,
yeah.
s- you know, teach me something I can use right away. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. It's all about your breath. So so in yoga, people think that the poses are what's the primary thing. It's not. Your breath is
Okay.
the primary thing. The poses are just secondary to that. So if you're stressed out and you need a moment, just starting to breathe in through your nose as deeply as you can, and then finding a pause at the top, and then exhaling for an equal amount. So it's working on equalizing your breath. A good starting point is to count for an inhale of 4, pause, and then count for an exhale of 4. So when you're
Gotcha.
focusing on that inhale and exhale, especially if you're counting it, it's hard to kind of let your mind go to anything else. So what's physically happening in your body with your breath?
Isn't that the number one way we release toxins from our body is through our breath and our exhale?
Yeah, we do. We do.
So it would stand to reason we need to get better at being real intentional about that, I would think, right?
Exactly. And our
Yeah.
breath has a very physiological response in our body. So if I'm breathing short and quick, that's sending my body a signal that I'm in danger, whether I really am or am not. But if I'm breathing slowly, that's signaling to my body that, okay, I'm safe, everything's okay.
Yeah.
And that response to your nervous system just relaxes your body, which can then
Gotcha.
help your mind.
So you already taught us something, which was my goal for the beginning of this. Um, for people who are a little suspect, cautiously optimistic. So that's kind of your introductory journey into it, and as you started to really see some benefits, like during your pregnancy, what was a kind of a logical next step for you that's taken you further down that path?
Yeah, so for me, oddly enough, and I've never even used this, but for me, I got my yoga certification for babies birth to age 2. So I did that when my daughter was a couple of months old. And so I've done that with her a little bit and her friends, but that was kind of like my first step into teaching, which I only, like I said, did with my daughter and her friends. But
Yep.
and then not long after that, I took a Yin Yoga certification. And so that was my first like yoga teaching certification. Yin Yoga is, if you don't know, where you do the yoga all on the ground, you hold the poses for 3 to 5 minutes, and you're really getting into connective tissue and fascia, which is essentially healing your body from the inside out.
Hmm.
And that is a slow practice and it's a difficult practice, but it is such a beneficial one. And if you take a practice with me, we always end with some yin. So that was my next progression into yoga.
Awesome. So you just said if we take a practice with you. So let's dive into that a little bit. So you start a yoga business,
Mm-hmm.
and where, I mean, I know the answer to this. I'm kind of like one of those trial attorneys, never going to ask a question you don't already know the answer to, but my audience doesn't know. So
Mm-hmm.
where exactly is your yoga studio located, Kristin? Give us the physical brick and mortar street address of it.
Yeah, there is no brick and mortar street address, depending on where I'm teaching.
What? How is that possible?
Yeah, so my yoga business, I've taught in a bunch of different places. I've done yoga series on the beach. I've done it in the parks, but my main kind of focus of where I kind of move towards is teaching yoga in breweries.
Really?
Hmm.
Coach Bru likes this.
Many people do.
Yeah. Tell us more.
Yeah,
So you
so
teach yoga in a brewery.
yep. Yeah, so I love beer and I love yoga. And so I also, the motto of my business and how I kind of try to live my life is with balance. And so, I do yoga, I do these things, and I also like beer. So I would often go out with my friend. We would go to a yoga studio and then we would go have a beer after. And so I I was just thinking we could combine them together and I'll do the yoga and then have a beer. And then people were really interested in it. Breweries
Yeah.
were interested in like bringing people in that way, and maybe a little bit of a different clientele. And one of the things that I actually really enjoy about it is I get a lot of people who have never done yoga before,
Yeah.
right? So I can talk all day long about the benefits of yoga, but the reality is for many people, a yoga studio can be very intimidating. As
That's
I can attain to that when I first started, right?
I I started doing yoga a bunch of years ago and I quit because I was stuck in a class. I'm so glad you brought this up because it's intimidating as hell. I'm stuck in a class with I'm an entrepreneur. I make my own schedule. So after I get my kids to school, I would go to yoga at the local gym. I was stuck in a class with a bunch of soccer moms who were like doing headstands and like breathing. I'm just going to breathe through my left nostril. Like they're doing, like, it was so advanced. And I'm like a fish out of water, like floundering in the back corner on my mat, like a beached whale, not knowing what the hell to do. Like, this just isn't working for me. It's stressing me out trying to relax.
Right. And nobody wants to feel that way. So, the yoga that I do, and I have moved through and I do have yoga, my 200-hour certified yoga teacher certification. So I I know how to teach yoga and my classes are designed for kind of everybody. So, and I have gotten that feedback that people who do yoga in a studio still feel like it's not a joke practice. Like I've had people come up to me after and they were said to me, they're like, I thought this was going to be a joke, yoga in a brewery, but this was like a yoga class. And I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
it is. And then just the also understanding that a lot of people are not comfortable with yoga and they're not comfortable with that perfection of what yoga studios sometimes are.
Isn't it amazing how much more comfortable they are in a bar, though?
Yeah, yes. I've had
Never
people,
been to a yoga studio. I've been to a bar, and boy, am
right?
I comfortable there.
Right. And the premise of my classes are you pay $15 for
Okay.
yoga and your first beer. And so I've actually had people who have gotten their beer before the yoga class and are drinking it throughout the yoga class. Like,
That would be me. Yeah.
right? It's
You get to
just
stay
zero.
hydrated, it's
Yeah,
good
that's it, right?
electrolytes, carbs,
Yeah.
right? It
Yeah.
might not make you more flexible, but if you have enough, you think there's nothing you can't do.
Right.
So this idea was simply born of you and one of your friends would go to a yoga class or go do yoga on the beach and then go out for a beer. So what was the sort of I mean, at the time of this recording, we're in a pandemic, and the buzzword at the beginning of the pandemic was, somebody was patient zero. Whoever brought it over to the US or whoever's the first person, in the state with it is sort of quote patient zero. What was Brewery Zero for you, and how was that born? Where you just said, let me talk to these people and see if we can do this here, and then we'll talk about how it kind of got traction and grew legs and you started taking the show on the road to other places. What was Brewery Zero or
Yeah.
Studio Zero or whatever you want to call it?
Funky Bow.
Okay.
So Funky Bow
What?
actually had the year before done yoga at the brewery. So I had done that a couple of times, and I had my daughter's birthday party at Funky Bow, because I don't know if you've ever been to Funky Bow, but it is a great place, even though it's a brewery. Like, it's outside, it's kids love it.
Uh,
It's
Tell us about it and tell us where it is and what beer they serve, because
yeah, so it's
there
in
are people
Lyme.
listening from all over the place, not just Maine, and they're
Yeah,
not going to have any clue what we're talking about.
right. So Funky Bow is in Lyman, Maine. It started with like this really just brewing beer out of their house. They would have a fire. You would just come drink beer. It's expanded now, so it's a lot bigger. It's still outside, so it's still got that farmy kind of feel. And now they
It,
do.
is that the brewery that has the IPA that's called So Folk and the Hoppy?
That's the one.
That's an awesome beer. Shout out to Funky Bow, although we have no free shout outs here. Very cool. That's very cool. So it
Yeah. So they
started there and you had a party there for your daughter.
Yeah, and I just went up to the owner and just said, "Hey, like, are you guys doing yoga this year?" And they said no. And so I was like, "Well, I'd love to do it." And so that just kind of started.
Yeah.
We did that, and there had been places around here who did yoga at breweries, but it all seems to stop once summer ends. And I'm a Mainer,
Mhm.
like, everything shuts down. It gets kind of sad. So I
Yeah.
still like to have things to look forward to. So I did it all winter at Brewery Extrava. I mean, sorry, not
You
Brewery
mean you don't like that it gets dark at 3:30 in the afternoon and the state flower is the satellite dish all winter?
I really don't know.
So you're
So
trying
I
to
just
solve a problem because you obviously are not the only person that feels that way. Yeah.
no, no. And then so we did kind of keep that going. And Funky Bow in the winter, I don't know now, but in non-COVID times, they have like a plastic thing that's almost like a greenhouse.
Yep.
So it keeps you really warm in there, and we would do it in there. And we did it on the dirt, right? So like we rolled our yoga mats out on the dirt and did yoga. Like, you can't, it's awesome.
Yeah. Talk about getting grounded.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. So that was sort of your version of patient zero was Funky Bow. And then, where did things progress from there? And then we'll start to unpack why this is so genius.
Yeah, so it was kind of connections, right? So someone I used to work with, her and her husband own some brewery in York, and they just opened up York Beach Beer Company.
So explain some brewery. I know
So
what you're talking about. I want to make sure everybody knows what you're talking about.
yeah, so some brewery, it's actually SOME.
Yes.
They say it's some, but it's
It's
essentially for like southern Maine. Yeah.
SO dot ME dot. Yeah.
Yeah, and they say it as some. So really great beer there. And
Where are you going? Oh, we're going to some brewery.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Uh, and so that just kind of started, and then I
Yeah.
formed this relationship, this really great relationship with York Beach Beer Company. their sister company, they have an amazing space. Like that's where we would practice yoga outside on the patio in the sun. And then we would
Mhm.
have our beer after. And so it just kind of grew that way. And then I just started to reach out to other breweries and just see who was interested in doing this. And then we kind of just grew it that way a little bit.
And I think where we connected was I saw that you were hosting an event at Stars and Stripes Brewery, owned by Brad and Nancy Netto up in Freeport. And they have just such a cool business model where it's a veteran owned business, owned and operated. And I mean, technically, it's a craft brewery, but really, their philosophy is that we're an organization. We build a community for veterans that just happens to also serve beer. So they're doing a lot of different things, and they're really creative and outside the box. Your event there is proof of that, and I just think it's such a cool concept because so many people um, find a reason not to get started and allow obstacles to get in their way. Oh, well, I don't have the money for a retail space, or I don't have a studio, or there's nowhere I can go to operate this event, or maybe it's just I don't want to spend the money to rent a space. Well, actually, you don't have to. You can borrow somebody else's audience and create a partnership, and that's exactly what you did. And it's we're in a time right now, especially where everyone's looking for like a reason not to do things. There are a lot of convenient, COVID's a convenient excuse for a lot of things to not happen, or for people to just simply say no before they even, in some cases, even know the question. The answer is no. And people are so focused on what they can't do, they don't focus or even try and find what they can do. And obviously, you started this pre-COVID, but credit to you, you didn't allow a lack of resources to stop you from going after what you wanted. And it's impressive to say the least. Talk a little bit about kind of the following you grew, and people who follow you from place to place, and sort of the community you've built.
Yeah. So it's fun, right? So I did start this last year in 2019. So, probably half my business at this point has been in a pandemic.
Yep.
But the places that I would go, I had my regular places. York Beach Beer Company was regular. Funky Bow was pretty regular. And then Brewery Extrava got added in as pretty regular. And so people would find me, and then they would follow me on social media or to my website where I would post all of my things. And then
And what's that website?
breathewithmeyogamaine.com.
There you go.
Maine is spelled out, yeah. So yeah, and then it was really cool. Like I would be seeing people who would be coming up from Massachusetts, right? Because York is a
Yeah.
very touristy place, and they were looking forward to doing yoga at York Beach Beer Company. Like that was one thing that they always did when they were here. And so people just started to look and see, and the places, the places that I was teaching are pretty spread out, but they were able to kind of find, if it was close enough, they would come and do it. And what they were saying was that it was a place where they could meet on neutral grounds, coming from wherever they were coming from,
Yep.
do yoga, which is so good, and then just kick back and have a beer for however long they wanted to.
And I think part of the genius with that, besides the fact that you are borrowing an audience, growing your audience, building awareness of your brand, is simply the fact that it's like you said, it's neutral ground, and there's the opportunity for people to just kind of continue the conversation after class over a beer. But also, how many people go to a bar or a brewery and have one drink,
Yeah.
right? So like
Yeah.
for $15, you get your class and a beer.
Right.
But people are gonna have more than one, and just about anytime they go anywhere, or they're gonna order food and have a couple drinks. So it's a win-win, because now the brewery gets additional business. You might be bringing them people that follow you, but had no idea there was a craft brewery in York, Maine. So you're helping them grow their business, they're helping you grow yours. And there's literally no downside for either party, which is what I think is the real brilliance or the real wizardry of it. Um, and you're smart enough not to do these things in too close proximity where like one brewery feels like the other they're stepping on each other's toes. You spread it out just enough, and like you said, people can kind of meet in the middle, and it's kind of a central meeting place for yoga, and then also the sort of happy hour kind of networking quality afterwards. What's some of the feedback you've gotten, and what have some of the breweries had to say about it?
Yeah, so York Beach Beer Company has definitely loved the people that it's brought in. And last winter, we did do it throughout the winter, and we did bring some local people in who were excited to have something to do and something to still look forward to, and they're just happy to get some new people into their brewery, right? So whether they follow me or they're there for the beer, we do come together and they get some new people and
Yeah.
people who try the beer who, because yoga at a brewery is, people are intrigued by that, right? Like they think it's kind of cool, and so they'll go try out a brewery that they haven't gone to before, and end up really liking it and come back. And so
I'm
it's
going to
the
guess that most of the people who are listening, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to just jump in with this. I'm going to guess that most of the people who are listening are hearing this concept for the first time. Like, beer, yoga at a brewery? What? Like, yoga's at a yoga studio, beer is at typically at a brewery or a bar, but like the two of them together. And that is an important nuance to the whole thing, in that I think the whole concept of place is very important in marketing, in that you're not in a place where you can be compared to a lot of other things. Like, for example, the place I sell more books than anywhere else is not at a bookstore, it's at a resort where, there's a copy of one of my books in each room, and in sort of like the lounge area and the lobby, and people just grab a copy and keep it, and the resort will reorder every time that they get low on books, or someone will walk up to the counter and say, hey, this I was reading this is pretty good, how much is it? And they'll just buy it. And it's because there's no comparison. It's unique, it's
yeah.
weird, it's a different concept. What you're doing is unique, weird in a good way. I mean, weird, like weird is a compliment, and you can't be compared to anything else because no one else is doing that. What was the old quote from the Grateful Dead? You don't want to be the best at what you do, you want to be the only at what you do. And there are a ton of yoga instructors at every YMCA, gym, studio, yoga studio. There are multiples, but how many of them take their show on the road and do it at a brewery
Yeah.
and make it so that it's not intimidating? Take something that's complex and make it simple in the eyes of the audience. You would be the only, at least that I know of, certainly in this state and in this market. And I want to give you so much credit for doing that. And it's something that's desperately needed, in terms of relaxation, flexibility. What are a couple of the benefits of, a novice? Because, entrepreneurs, small business owners, people who listen to this show, like, we're very type A, competitive, driven personalities. And we need to learn how to shut it off and, kind of turn down the noise and just chill out. Sell us on the benefits of doing this?
Yeah. So mentally, like, yoga just calms, it just decreases your stress and anxiety, and who the heck doesn't have that right now, right? Like, so even if you are unable to kind of do it in the way you think you should, like being on your mat and just connecting for any amount of time, right? So that's also the thing. Like, it doesn't have to be an hour-long yoga class to get a benefit. I've started to create 15-minute programs for people
Yep.
who are like, no way in hell I can be on a mat for an hour. Cool. Let's talk about that. What is a good length of time for you? And creating programs for them that work for them in the areas that are bad, that are tough for them. But the
When you say
breathing,
areas that are tough for them, what are a couple of common examples of that?
people, back, hips, like physical body parts, right?
Yes.
That could be challenging. Many of us, I think, we need to slow down, like our minds, right? We're scrolling, it's just changing our brain chemistry. And so if we're slowing down and breathing and connecting to our breath and just trying to stay in that present moment, that stress and anxiety kind of melts away, right? If I'm anxious about what's going to happen tomorrow, but I'm focused on the present moment, then there isn't anything to worry about.
Yeah.
And then the body, right? Like, the yin that I talked about earlier, that helps you do all of the other things, right? So if you are an intense athlete, and many professional athletes have started to do yin yoga as they've seen that it improves their performance. So when you're healing your body from the inside out, you're allowing it to work in a different way. So stretching, and it lengthens your muscles. So if you're looking to change what your body looks like, that
Yeah.
lengthening is a better bang for your buck than being on the elliptical.
And if you think about, like you had mentioned, kind of the mental side of it, and we have so many thoughts floating through our head, and we're constantly scrolling. Well, what else are we also doing when we're constantly scrolling? We're like hunched over on our phone, or we're hunched over at our laptop or our computer all day at our desk, and neither of which are good for you. I'm confident it's how my neck, I got herniated discs in my neck this time last year. Is simply from it was a bad pattern of repeated bad pattern of posture sitting at my desk every day. So it's the ability to lengthen those muscles and kind of reverse some of the damage that we're doing, I imagine, is hugely important, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's definitely one of the things that I talk about. We talk about in teaching and in the poses that we get into is our physical body, and and the strategies to kind of combat that, right? So many of us have desk jobs where we are hunched over. But simple things like setting alarms randomly throughout the day to check where your body uh, is and make adjustments, and they may go back, but the more you do that, it's like with anything, the more you do it, the more that's what becomes your second nature. So if I'm setting alarm every half an hour throughout the day to just check in on my posture and remind myself to come upright, then that becomes something that we do more and more. So that's what it's about, right? Is that repetition of, the more I do this, it's practice. It's a yoga practice. So we do it on our mat so that we can take it into our lives.
And again, it's a practice, and you're not expected to be good at it right away, folks. If you take nothing else from our conversation, I want you to do this immediately. Um, Go on your smartphone or on your laptop and go in and set some alarms for your work day. And how often should people set an alarm to get up and move and step away from the device? How often would you recommend? Like every
Yeah, so there's a lot of research that shows that as humans, we can only focus on one task for 33 minutes. And
Okay.
then our efficiency starts to decline. So I've slid away from it a little bit, but I would often set an alarm for 33 minutes. And every 33 minutes, I will step away and and kind of just check in.
So that's what I want you to do. I want you to go into your device and set an alarm for every 33 minutes. And so often, like we make the mistake of like, we're at the mercy of our technology, and technology ends up using us as opposed to us using it. So you need to treat your smartphone or your desktop or your laptop like it's an employee. Make it work for you. Set that alarm, and when it goes off, step away. Don't shut it off and then step away. Step away and shut it off and then come back to it a few minutes later. Uh, when you have people kind of hit pause every 33 minutes, what do you recommend they do? And this is a really easy win for everybody listening, just to be able to go do this one thing later today.
Yeah. uh so you just get up and walk away, walk around, like move your body and just get out of that stagnant position. Whether you're sitting or standing, the research again kind of shows that if you're doing one thing for too long, that's
Yeah.
bad. So just get up and walk around. If you have a place that you can walk outside and just get fresh air. Many people will say that they don't have time in their day to do this, but the reality of what you're giving yourself back to focus is you're
Yeah.
going to gain so much more getting out, doing the fresh air, even just walking around, you know, going and just saying hi to a colleague or whatever, just getting away and moving.
Yeah, I've been setting alarms like every 50 minutes. I'm going to ratchet it down to 33 now. Thank you. But I have a foam roll that I keep next to my desk, and I literally just get on the floor and I foam roll my back and my neck, and my hamstrings, and I'll just get up and I'll walk around the building. I'll go outside and get some air. Case in point, on the days that I leave the office and I feel like I kind of had a quote bad day. Those are the days where I shut the alarm off. I didn't pay attention to it. I didn't do things for myself, and I just tried to power through whatever project I was working on. Yesterday of all days, I was so incredibly productive, and I walked out of the office really feeling a sense of accomplishment. It's no small coincidence. That's the day that I worked out, I stretched, followed my alarms,
Hmm.
and I stepped away and I got fresh air. So there's an absolute correlation between doing this and being better because of it and getting more done. It's we reach a point of diminishing returns in everything we do, and it's not a waste of time. You're not spending time away from your desk doing something. You're investing time and kind of slowing down to speed up a little bit. So I want to encourage everybody to do that, to set those alarms. And I kind of want to break down the marketing side of things and the business, because what you've done, and people are probably sitting here thinking, if they're not drinking my Kool-Aid, so to speak, that your best ideas come from outside your industry, they're thinking, well, what's this have to do with me? And it has everything to do with you. Like, especially if you're starting a new business, or if you have an existing business and you're launching a new product to a new audience, or a new service to a new audience, and you don't have an audience for it, what do? You don't try and build one from zero on your own. The smartest thing you can do is do what Kristin did and borrow someone else's existing audience that would potentially be receptive to your offer. That's exactly what she did. She didn't go somewhere that was non existent. She didn't say, I'm going to build a studio down the end of this dead end dirt road in the middle of nowhere and hope people show up. She went somewhere that already had foot traffic. And I understand, during a pandemic and there's all this shelter in place and limits on number of people you can have inside. And a lot of people just aren't going inside, frequenting businesses. You can still go somewhere where there's traffic existing online. If you don't have a ton of traffic on your page or your socials, borrow someone else's audience. So, Kristin, tell us a little bit about the online stuff that you're doing. She's got a great newsletter, folks. If you go to breathewithmeyogamain.com, sign up for her newsletter, because it tells you literally what she's doing, where she's doing it, whether it's at a brewery when there isn't a pandemic, or, teaching something online. So tell us a little bit about, I believe it's Sundays. Is that accurate? What you do on
Yep.
Sundays?
Yep. Right now, Sundays at 8:30, I'm doing a yoga class through Zoom. So the Zoom link is always sent out in my newsletter. It's on my website under the events, it's linked there. And so it's again on Sunday mornings, we just do usually a nice easy flow and then followed into Yin. Last Sunday, after all the election craziness, we did a full hour of restorative yoga. So really just like that regeneration, that
Yeah.
resting. So every Sunday at 8:30 online in your own house. Last week someone did it in their pajamas. No judgment.
Awesome. And for like slackers who like to sleep in other words, people who don't have small children and actually have the luxury of sleeping in on weekends,
Yeah.
do you have a recording on a channel where they can access, any of this as a replay?
Yeah, so I have just started to record my Zoom videos, and I am going to be starting to figure out a way to upload those. That information will come out on my website and via my newsletter. So if you're interested in being able to watch these videos at your own leisure, then follow that because that'll be telling you how you can do that.
Yeah, for your own mental health, get on her newsletter. Whether you want to do a yoga video or not, there's all sorts of other helpful tips and strategies to help you find balance in your life. And I don't say this and I don't preach at you about this so much as I'm saying it for my own, like, I need to take my own advice on this too. And Kristen's been a great resource for me, so I'd encourage you to hop on her list and reap the benefits of learning what she teaches, and learn how to breathe. If all you did is learn how to breathe better and listen to your body, you're going to be better because of it. And yeah, I think that there's just an incredibly valuable lesson in resourcefulness. You don't need a lot of financial resources to successfully start or run a business. You need really good intellectual resources. What have been some of the benefits of this in terms of whether it's audience building or client base? What have been some of the benefits of you taking this really outside of the box, cool idea and running with it?
Yeah, the benefits for me, above everything else has been being able to bring yoga to people that wouldn't normally do it.
Mhm.
I know the benefits of yoga. I am a yoga teacher. I practice yoga, and being able to get that information out to people of how it can impact their lives, and that it doesn't have to be in a studio and perfect, and just having those conversations with people. I've loved having conversations where people are like, this was my first yoga class, this was great, and then they keep coming back. Every
Yep.
Sunday that I was at Brewery Extrava, that was the yoga that they did. And it's just been really great to spread that.
I knew that was going to be your answer, and that's what I wanted to hear, because I think that there's an important point that shouldn't be lost on everyone here, and it's that you're not building a business. You don't want to. You don't want to just build a business or build a brand. You want to build a community, because when you have a community, people stick around. You have customers. When I say customer, I mean people who make a custom of buying from you. They make a custom of not just showing up once, a custom of returning, repeat customers. It's a custom. So you have a following. You've built an audience of fans and people who will travel and go wherever you're teaching and practice yoga, but then also have a beer. And you've done it in a way, and here's another, I think, really kind of important nuanced tip for everyone, is you've done it in a way that's fun for you. And I think, whatever you're doing in business or your personal life, if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong, people. You're absolutely doing it wrong if you're not having fun at what you do. If it sucks, you need to reinvent it so you're having fun. So, what does she enjoy? She enjoys yoga. She also enjoys beer. So, Kristin found a way to not just do both of those things, but do both of those things, monetize both of those things together, have fun while she's doing it, and help a lot of other people. She's not just helping the customers who show up who practice yoga, she's helping the business owners. And, it's like, you think you're in a competitive industry, whoever you are listening to this right now, and you very well might be, but you are not a craft brewer in the number one beer city in America. Like in 2000, I think it was 2018, Portland, Maine, surrounding like Portland, Southern Maine area, it's the #1 craft beer city in America, according to like, what was it, the North American Brewers Guild, or, one of those associations. They named Portland the #1 beer city. So it's an incredibly competitive industry where you need to find different creative ways to stand out and grow your audience. Beer and yoga, creative way to stand out and grow your audience. She brought that solution to a couple different places. They're better because of it. Their business is better because of it. And I think everyone listening, you can have your own version of this if you are willing to be intellectually curious, look at your market, listen to your market, and think about how you might be able to kind of take her model and modify it for what you do. Kristin, any tips for people? Like, you obviously, had your radar on and your antenna up for a unique opportunity to kind of merge your interests. What would you tell people who are thinking about doing something outside the box like this, or on the fence, or, wondering, oh, would something like that be for me?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot of my life before I started doing things. So I think it's just putting yourself out there, understanding that no, the answer no will happen, but it's not letting it kind of define you. So it's just the fun thing, right? Finding something you enjoy.
Yep.
Like, I spend a lot of time doing this, but it doesn't feel like work because I really enjoy it. So finding that thing you enjoy, and then your why. So what is your purpose behind it? Why do you want to do this? And then letting that drive everything that you do, and just taking risks and asking.
Yeah. Yeah, you get 100% of whatever you don't ask for.
Mhm.
Like, and that's not a good thing. You get 100% of what you don't ask for. So even if you only got 20% of what you did ask for, you're better because of it.
Right.
And I am sure there are probably some breweries that are just like, what, beer and yoga? No, we don't do that. People come here and they drink beer. Like, it's probably not for everybody, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be for everybody. If it were for everybody, it wouldn't work, because everyone would be doing it. You've got to find a way to stand out and be different as a brewer, as a yoga practitioner, as whatever industry you're in. You've got, you're either different or you're invisible today more than ever. And I understand there are some restrictions, but you can do your version of whatever this might be online. Thanks to the powers of Zoom, we're recording this on Zoom right now. We're able to connect virtually in a way that pre-COVID, wasn't. I mean, it was available. It just wasn't nearly as popular or as widely used. But you can build online communities too. So don't be shy about just treating it like an experiment. If you're worried about, oh, what if it fails? Don't go into it thinking of it as a project or a new initiative, or this is going to be a new line in my business, or I'm going to go this direction come hell or high water. Treat it like an experiment. We're going to experiment with this. We're going to try it for 3, 4, 5 weeks, however many, and see if it grows traction. See if it's rewarding and fun. Listen to what feedback you get. Whatever you might be doing, treat it like an experiment. It's semantics. Yeah, it's a little bit semantics, but it also takes the pressure off of you about, can I pull the plug on it? Instead of like feeling like it's a failed project, just treat it like an experiment and decide that you're going to pivot to something else in the future if you don't like the direction it's headed. So it's just really about exploring things that interest you and adjusting on the fly. And it's really that simple. Obviously, that's what Kristin's done very successfully, and her business is better because of it. And you can do the same thing. Kristin, what's one thing you know now that you wish you would have known when you got started doing this?
Ah, um,
That's the $1 million question for everybody, isn't it? Like, what do you know now that you've kind of been through it all a bit that you wish you would have started doing, or you wish you would have knew right out of the gates?
Yeah, more of the marketing strategies, the how to grow my audience.
Hmm.
When I first started, I didn't really have anything out there, and I have a friend who's a designer who helped me kind of get that together and then do the sign-in sheet, and that's how I was able to grow people on my list and get that going. So just having those marketing, and I didn't know, so just finding someone who could talk about it, but that's it, like
Yeah.
getting out there more from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think that's the message for everyone is you're a marketer first, and then you're in the business of doing whatever it is you think you're in the business of, like whatever it says on your business card. If you're a small business owner, you're an entrepreneur, probably 80% of your time is going to be spent marketing and promoting, and the other 20 will be spent doing that thing until you reach kind of a tipping point where the scales flip a little bit. But yeah, that is great advice. Find somebody that can do some of this stuff. You're not expected to have all the answers, but it helps to know people who do have the right answers and can direct you. And I think the other really powerful thing that I wanted to touch on that is part of Kristen's wizardry with all this is they're showing and telling. And so many business owners, marketers, brands, or whatever spend so much time telling you why this is awesome, or why you should do that, or why you ought to buy their product, why you ought to use their service, as opposed to actually showing you the benefits of it and letting you kind of put yourself through the paces of it. And the nice thing about being able to bring this to an audience in some of these unique places that you do, the beach, parks, breweries, is it's showing, it's not telling. And showing always trumps telling from a marketing standpoint, because people get like they get it on a trial basis. They get to experience it. If you're a kinesthetic learner, especially, and like a third of the population are kinesthetic learners, they need to experience these things. It's why demonstration is such a powerful tool. You look at even just the world of infomercials. What are they always full of? They're always full of demonstrations. The ShamWow guy throws a 2-liter bottle of soda on a little piece of carpet and then mops it up with a ShamWow demonstration. You get to see, hey, this is how it works. But when you get to demonstrate yoga and show people how to do it and they actually get to do it themselves, that's powerful as opposed to just telling. So make sure you include some sort of element of demonstration with what you do as well. And the other piece is, Kristen, you had mentioned, an hour is a long time. 90 minutes is an eternity in a yoga class. And you've structured it so if someone needs 15 minutes and that's all they're capable of, you can help them get benefits in 15 minutes. I think that you could take that concept and apply it to every industry. Attention spans are an all-time low in this country. And, beyond a lack of attention span is just people are so busy and they really question, like, should I do it at all if I can't devote an hour to it? Yeah, every little bit helps when it comes to your physical and your mental health. And to be able to
Absolutely.
package something, in a small dose is still beneficial. Can you touch on that for a second real quick? Because I think like everyone needs these small wins in their life.
Definitely. And I used to be the same way, not wanting to do it if I couldn't devote however much time. But I'll just sit and do yoga poses while I'm watching TV. I know the yoga poses that I need the most, and I will just sit and do it. And so I don't feel like you can just do it that way.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of research that's come out that says that the quicker um the more energy, I put this in my newsletter this week, like the more you can put into a more intense quick burst, the less time you have to work out. So in 15 minutes you can get a really great workout that clears your mind, makes your body feel really good in 15 minutes. And even though you may not feel like that is worth it if you can't get an hour, you're your body and mind will thank you for it. And you will notice over time in those 15 minutes that you are improving and it is helping you. So it's just getting past that hump of thinking I have to do an hour of exercise or it doesn't matter, and just starting with the 15 minutes and noticing how you feel. You'll see the benefit.
Best selling exercise program of all time. You know what it is?
Best selling exercise program of all time.
Online. Yeah, online.
Online. I don't.
It's not 7. It's not 9. It's 8-minute abs. You know, that's power of a great title, but it's also the power of like being able to demonstrate to somebody. You don't need to spend an hour in the gym doing abs or spend a ton of time doing all these exercises. You can get it done in 8 minutes and repeat that day in, day out. 8 minutes. Who doesn't have 8 minutes, right?
Right.
Who doesn't have 15 minutes for that matter? So yeah, it's a lot, a little always is better than a little, a lot. You're better off doing, 8 to 15 minutes of something every day than trying to cram in an hour once a week or 2 hours once a week, because then it's not a habit and you find a way to kind of work it out of your schedule instead of working it in. So I think that's brilliant. Kristin, remind us again as we wrap up here, the best way for people to get in touch, stay in touch with you.
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram, Breathe With Me Yoga Maine. You can go to my website, www.breathewithmeyogamaine.com, and that's where you can click. You can do the add to my list. You can also email me, breathewithmeyogamaine@gmail.com.
On your website, is the opt-in for your list at the top or is it the bottom? Where would they get that?
Yeah, so you go to the homepage, there's a picture, and then there's just a little blurb, and it's right below that.
Oh, it's pop-up box. Okay, awesome.
Yes, yeah.
Very good. So go to the website, join her list. You'll be better because of it. I love asking my listeners to kind of call me out a little bit and to shame me. What was the one question I forgot to ask that I should have and didn't? This is your opportunity to just slap me on the wrist for negligence. What didn't I ask that I should have, Kristin?
I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Wow, I didn't do that bad. You plugged your socials, your website. I asked you about the benefits of a novice doing this, where to get involved, how to do it. Good. Well, I'm glad I was thorough for a change. Awesome. So again, everyone go to breathewithmeyogamaine.com. Head over to her website, join her list. You'll be better because of it. And yeah, just get started. Breathing, stretching, clearing your mind and listening to your body. Kristin, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you having the time today and being a guest on the podcast. Let's do this again real soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.